With CCTV being so commonplace, it's not surprising that cameras have caught some of the scariest moments of paranormal activity, especially in older buildings with a long history, leading to some creepy CCTV footage. Agatha Christie's life was almost as mysterious as one of her novels. But for a museum in Devon, it seems like the mysteries continued into her afterlife. One museum in the United Kingdom has the country's only Agatha Christie collection, and some of the staff believe that may include her ghost. Creepy CCTV footage from the museum's gift shop showed something pulling books off of a shelf. At first, only a handful of books are pulled to the floor. But when the workers go to investigate the rest of the books, they tumble to the floor as well. The staff say this sort of thing isn't uncommon. Strangely though, it's only ever Agatha Christie books that are seen flying from the shelves. On one occasion, the books physically hit a woman who was going through the gift shop. Later in life, Christie said she would often dream of Ashfield, the villa where she was born and spent her early years. When the villa was torn down in the 1960s, Christie was devastated. Some of the boards from her childhood home were saved and later turned into the steps of the ladder in the museum gift shop. This wasn't the only mysterious activity at the museum. Elsewhere, the museum houses Devon's only real mummy. The mummy is entombed in a sarcophagus, which is rarely opened. In a special event, the sarcophagus was opened for the first time in 7 years, which took 7 men to lift the coffin's lid. In the dust, they found what looked like fingerprints which had never been explained. There have also been photographs of a female ghost. One was taken by a team of ghost hunters who claim it wasn't seen with the naked eye. A second photo was taken during a paranormal investigation. This showed what seemed to be a candlelit woman sat on the floor. Others have disputed this, saying it was simply someone sat there looking at their phone in the dark. But some have said there's a similarity between the woman and a young Agatha Christie. Bodman Jail in Cornwall is allegedly one of the most haunted locations in the United Kingdom. The jail was built in the 1770s, and it's said the local granite it was constructed out of, which has a high concentration of quartz, is partially responsible for containing the souls of those that have passed away within its walls. While not CCTV, there have been countless moments of paranormal activity captured on camera, both in the form of video and still images. Even more people have experienced the terrifying paranormal phenomenon in real life, but were unable to gather evidence. The jail was in operation from the late 1700s all the way up to 1922. In the beginning, conditions were terrible, with overcrowding being a major issue, and no segregation between men and women, or violent and non-violent crime. Between the harsh punishment, the dangerous conditions, and disease that was rampant within the walls, an untold number of people perished in the prison. A total of 55 people had capital punishment carried out against them, the most recent being in 1909. It's this man, William Hampton, that ghost hunter Tony Ferguson believes he captured on a stationary camera when he visited the prison in 2018. He and his wife were the only visitors in the prison at the time for their investigation. They heard faint, far-off voices and scratching, saw unexplained mists, and captured electronic voice phenomena during their time at the site. Tony was calling out to Hampton, who was punished for taking the life of his lover when the apparition appeared. What Tony believes to be Hampton is hard to make out. At the end of the corridor, what appears to be a figure cloaked in darkness crosses the corridor. Given the jail was dark at the time, it's hard to make out the full figure, but what appears to be his face is more visible. The movement definitely looks like someone slowly walking rather than a piece of dust drifting past the camera. Another apparition that has been caught on camera is that of the Hag. The Hag has been seen in various locations within the prison, and it's not tied to one place. The prison's paranormal manager and her daughter were taking photos when they captured a strange, agitated woman who appeared to be dressed in old-fashioned clothing. Many visitors to the prison, which is now a tourist attraction, have claimed to have seen the hag and have said that they were filled with the feeling of needing to walk away and not turn back. The Carlile Castle Hotel Pub in Newtown, New South Wales, has shared multiple scary moments of paranormal activity caught on CCTV. The pub, which was established in 1876, is apparently haunted by an unknown entity which has a taste for expensive wine. It was 2014 when the establishment first made headlines after sharing some of the creepy footage on social media. 3 CCTV videos which captured the paranormal were shared. The first video was of an empty dining area just before midnight. What at first looks like a shapeless patch of white mist forms into a long strand that waves across the camera. It takes the shape of a person waving at the camera, its head at the bottom of the screen. The second video was taken from the bar area, taken at about 8 p.m. In the footage, one of the workers is getting something from a refrigerator when 2 bottles of wine fall from a shelf behind him. The worker is nowhere near the shelf when the bottle falls. Some have suggested it may have been vibrations from the refrigerators that caused the bottles to fall. But looking closely at the video, it definitely appears like something pulled the 2 bottles from where they were secured on the shelf. The third of the now somewhat infamous videos is again from the bar area, but a different angle. In this video, patrons are sat and stood around the bar. There's one worker at the back of the bar that's watching the customers, and another worker at the end of the shot. Suddenly, a glass item flies off the shelf next to the woman closest to the camera. She wasn't moving at the time, so hadn't knocked it off herself, and didn't seem to be paying any attention to it. All the customers turned to the incident, but none seemed to be able to explain what happened. When the owner shared the footage to his Facebook page, there were many suggestions about who might be the spirit. Some have suggested it might be someone by the name of Old Pete, who had run the bar in the 1990s. A bust of Pete supposedly still stands behind the bar. Alternatively, some have said it was the last person to run the pub, or even one of the former regulars that still wants to hang out at his favorite bar. Another video from 2018 might have some answers. The footage is of a small office space with nobody in it. A picture falls from somewhere off camera. According to the owner, the wire and hook were still intact, but the frame fell top first. A staff member comes in and picks up the picture, which is a black and white portrait of a man. The owners didn't share who the man in the picture was, but it's possible he may have been connected to the haunting. The Old Man and Scythe Pub is the 4th oldest public house in England and dates back to the 1200s. Situated in the town centre of Bolton in Greater Manchester, it's been the site of countless gruesome stories, and some of those seem to have seeped into the foundation itself. The pub first appeared on the town charter in 1251. Obviously, it's received multiple facelifts over the years, but much of the interior dates all the way back to 1636. It was a few decades after this that the most famous of the tragedies to occur at the pub happened. The English Civil War came to ye olde Man and Scythe's doorstep in 1644. Bolton was a royalist town at the time, and more than 1,600 people lost their lives in an event sometimes called the Storming of Bolton. James Stanley, the Earl of Derby, and a man whose family owned the pub at the time, played a large part in the devastation. After the end of the war, parliamentarian forces came for him. Stanley was sitting in the pub drinking when he was apprehended by the parliamentarians and dragged outside. They took his life there as punishment for his part in the tragedy that had occurred 7 years earlier. Stanley's spirit is said to be one of dozens that still linger at the pub, and many believe it was him captured on CCTV in 2014. The chilling footage from the bar shows a hooded figure appear from the darkness. The lights flicker around it before everything cuts out and the figure vanishes once more. For those that frequented the bar, the paranormal footage caught on CCTV was just evidence of something they experienced on a regular basis. According to the landlord, paranormal activity happened almost daily. This involved everything from a ghostly dog that would lick his feet in the middle of the night and sleep at the end of his bed, to the scarier figures like the former Earl. Other spirits included that of a girl called Jenny that tugs on the dresses of female patrons and sometimes pinches guests, and a male spirit that touches female workers while they're in the cellar. According to the owner, none of the female staff will enter the cellar alone now. It's not only apparitions in this paranormal pub though. One story tells of a woman in the 19th century who was enjoying an evening at the bar when she looked at her hands to find red fluids mysteriously pouring from her body. She ran screaming from the establishment only to find that she didn't have a single scratch on her. The Eagle's Nest in Quincy, Illinois isn't particularly well known for paranormal activity. The hotel was built in 1972, its name changing a number of times over the years. But according to the manager, the charm stays the same. Reviews of the hotel show nothing out of the ordinary, but staff at the Eagle's Nest have different stories to tell. The hotel came into the spotlight when a scary paranormal moment was caught on camera and shared by one of the hotel staff. The staff member had been checking security cameras after an item went missing from the housekeeper's cart. She found video of the cart parked in an empty hallway just outside an elevator at 12 minutes past 1 in the afternoon. In the clip, uploaded to Facebook, there was about 15 minutes of the still hallway before something darts out of the entrance to the elevator. The dark, shadowy figure moves very quickly, darting to the cart and back in an instant. When it first leaves its hiding place, it seems humanoid in shape, but seems to lose shape as it leaves the cart. It's not clear if the figure actually takes anything, or if the missing item from the cart was just a coincidence. The elevator itself is closed throughout the clip, as it was explained that light would be shining from the elevator if the door was open. So even if this figure was a real person, there wasn't any way it could have hid there. Despite no mention of a haunting before, the staff member who shared the video claims staff at Eagle's Nest Hotel were used to paranormal activity. They claim to hear unexplained giggling and sometimes see shadowy figures out of the corner of their eye. The activity seems mostly focused on a particular maintenance man, so it's possible the entity is haunting him rather than the hotel itself. Staff believe the figure is a spirit of a child or something pretending to be a child. Many of the commenters on the video claim it seemed more demonic in nature than a playful child. One commenter claimed to see multiple spirits in the video, including something hiding beneath the cart. Beyond this, there's little information about when the haunting started, or what could have possibly triggered the haunting in the first place. The building isn't too old, but it's possible a lot of bad energy has accumulated over the years, resulting in this scary paranormal moment caught on camera. Located 11 miles outside of Manchester's Stockport, an up-and-coming market town is the last place you'd expect to be home of one of the most haunted places in the world. Stockport is a town steeped in rich history, and throughout the centuries, it was home to textile mills and hat factories that supplied not just the UK, but the world with their products. Built in the 14th century, Bremel Hall has been called home by some of the most important people in Stockport and the surrounding areas of Greater Manchester. The Tudor Hall sits on over 70 acres of land, complete with lakes, gardens, and some woods. One legend amongst the locals is that the hall was intended to be built elsewhere, but when the builders returned one morning, they found that the foundation had been moved to its current location. Legend goes that fairies moved the foundation, and since then it is stuck. If you visit the Bremel Hall on New Year's Eve, you might catch a glimpse of the infamous Red Rider, a ghostly apparition who wears a red cape and rides in on horseback, only to mysteriously disappear into the fog. The Red Rider is the ghost of a real horseback rider who came across the hall by chance in 1630 while out on his travels. The rider approached the hall and asked William Davenport, the current owner, for a place to stay for the night, to which Davenport agreed. By morning, the mysterious man had disappeared, and William Davenport was found deceased in his room. Other visitors have reported seeing the ghost of Alice the maid, who haunts the rooms of Bremel Hall looking for vengeance. The story goes that Alice was waiting for her husband to return from Spain, only to find his horse without a rider. She passed soon after of a broken heart and vowed to avenge her husband. She now roams the halls looking for her beloved. This isn't the only paranormal activity occurring at Bremel Hall. Others have described odd sensations and feelings, with one person saying that it felt as if someone had thrown ice-cold water over them. Other visitors have reported strange smells with no origin, shadowy figures watching them, and even an orphan playing by itself. Hoya Bichu Forest is home to the Clearing, a place that has been called one of the scariest and creepiest places on Earth for its creepy goings-on and its alleged portal into another dimension. Hoya Bichu Forest is located in Romania, deep in the area known as Transylvania. While the name Transylvania might conjure up images of vampires and Dracula, locals have assured us that running into a vampire in Hoya Bichu Forest would be the least of your worries. The forest encompasses over 617 acres of forests, complete with winding trees and disturbing silence. Due to its size, it's easy to see why so many people get lost in the forest, but some people believe that there is much more to it than just wandering off into the woods and getting lost. The forest has been the home of so many unsolved and unexplainable events that it's been dubbed the Bermuda Triangle of Romania, and some Romanians warn tourists to avoid it completely. Deep into the forest is an area known as the Clearing. This part of the forest is most well known to those outside of Romania. In 1968, Emil Barnea photographed what he claimed was a UFO hovering over the Clearing. Years later, other people photographed and reported the same thing, only to be heavily discredited by the Romanian government and outcast from society. Visitors to the forest have reported leaving with burns, rashes, headaches, fevers, and other extreme symptoms that they did not arrive with. There is even a story of a shepherd who walked into the forest with 200 sheep, only for him and his flock of sheep to mysteriously vanish without a trace. Some people have claimed that they entered the Clearing only to be transported through a portal to another dimension. Other visitors have reported seeing dark, shadowy figures among the trees, watching them, and also reported seeing the ghost of a man dressed in traditional Romanian clothing, wandering aimlessly through the forest as if he was looking for someone or something. Locals who go against the advice to enter the forest report seeing ectoplasms throughout their visit, and stated that their phones and other devices failed. Most people are too afraid to enter the forest, but for those who are brave enough, there are tour companies who will show you around and even let you camp in the forest, dubbed as one of the scariest places on Earth. Dragsholm Slot in Denmark has fortified itself as one of Denmark's most haunted buildings. Built in 1215, the castle has been the center of some of the most important, yet darkest parts of Danish history between 1534 and 1536. Danish Catholics and Danish Protestants were involved in a power struggle. Both sides took over towns, villages, and buildings, such as castles, to fortify their position. Dragsholm Slot remained the only castle in the region to not be captured or destroyed, and became an important place. This conflict brought about reformation in the country, and Dragsholm Slot Castle was seized and controlled by the Danish government, and this is where the darker history begins. The castle was stripped of its former glory and turned into a prison to hold high-ranking members of society, such as noblemen. These prisoners were held in less than ideal conditions, with the worst offenders being given the worst punishments. Today, visitors report hearing the shouts and cries of those who were once held in the castle. One of the most infamous ghosts to roam the halls is the White Lady, who many believe to be Selina Bowles, who came from a noble family. Her ghostly apparition is said to roam the halls looking for revenge after her father imprisoned her in the castle's dungeon for falling in love with a commoner. In the 1930s, workmen reported finding remains in one of the dungeon's walls and said that the skeleton was wearing a white dress. Not all of those who roam the halls are sad though. The Grey Lady of Dragsholm Slot Castle is said to be a happy spirit who performs good deeds to those she encounters. It's said that in life, the Grey Lady passed accidentally after being given a remedy to cure her toothache by her master. Instead of being angry, the spirit of the lady lived on, thankful that her master tried to save her and wanting to do good deeds for him to repay her debt. Tucked away in an idyllic country lane, the ancient Ram Inn looks unassuming and peaceful from the outside. To innocent tourists, the house might look like just another B&B, waiting to host guests as they go about their adventures in the English countryside. But make no mistake, the ancient Ram Inn is unlike any other inn you'll see in the quiet town. There are very few brave souls who have stayed the night, and residents are too afraid to step foot onto its grounds. The owner even claims that an incubus and succubus call the inn home. The inn was built in 1145 and was used as living quarters for those who worked on the St. Mary's Church, with a large percentage of these workers being there involuntarily. To add to the mysterious history, the ancient Ram Inn is rumored to have been built on top of a 5,000-year-old pagan burial ground, which only adds to the ghostly presences seen at night. The house is filled with religious items, complete with a Bible in every room. One Bible has an eerie sign next to it that reads "Careful here" without further explanation. This isn't the only creepy message that visitors are met with. By the main staircase, there reads a sign that says, "You enter here at your own risk." Visitors to the Holm report that it's cold and there's a constant feeling that someone is watching you. On the first floor of the inn sits the bishop's room. The current owner, John Humphreys, describes this room as the most haunted room in the world, and told the BBC that he doesn't sleep very well at night. According to John, a monk slept in the bishop's room, but ended up fleeing in the middle of the night, jumping out of a window. Ever since then, his ghost has haunted the bishop's room, along with the ghosts of those contacted through seances and other magical rituals. John also told BBC, quote, 8 people who have slept in there have had to be exorcised. John's daughter, Carolyn, added, quote, "I did spend the night once and won't ever again. People get a strong presence on their chest and can't get out of bed. I experienced furniture being dragged around me, a really heavy, loud, laborious dragging noise." There's also the witch's room, which is filled with pagan and witchcraft items. The popular belief is that a witch was tried at the ancient Ram Inn, and that her spirit is trapped there, seeking revenge on the townspeople who turned on her. John also invited a clergyman to visit and bless the house, to which the clergyman replied, quote, "I'm not going in there. What you've got in there is very, very evil." John regularly welcomes visitors and paranormal investigators. The question is, would you be brave enough to stay the night? The Buxton Inn in Ohio has long been a hotspot for paranormal activity that has left locals and curious tourists alike coming back for more. The inn was built in 1812, and over the years has been the host to many famous guests such as Abraham Lincoln and Henry Ford. While the inn has a rich and vibrant history of famous and important guests, There's a darker side to the inn that gives it the reputation of being one of the most haunted places in Ohio. Guests at the Buxton Inn have reported seeing the ghost of Ethel Houston, a previous inn owner, roaming from room to room. Ethel owned the inn for over 25 years and lovingly cared for every inch of it. Ethel was regularly seen around the hotel in her fancy blue dress, doused in gardenia perfume that could be smelled as she walked past. Ethel has now been dubbed the Blue Lady by both staff and guests at the inn, after her ghost, complete with a blue dress, is often spotted. Ethel isn't the only one seen around the inn, and the ghost of her cat, Major Buxton, can also be spotted at the inn. Guests who stay in room 9 report being visited by the ghost of a cat in the middle of the night, and also report that Major Buxton will oftentimes get on the bed and snuggle up next to whoever is staying there. Visitors at the Buxton Inn have reported hearing their names being called out to them, along with loud footsteps or doors opening by themselves. On the 26th of November, 2011, the Mars Science Laboratory was launched from Cape Canaveral, together with its rover called Curiosity. Just over 8 months later, on the 6th of August 2012, it landed in the Gale crater located on Mars. The rover's mission is to collect data on the planet's climate and geology, whether it has the environmental conditions needed to support microbial life, as well as planetary habitability studies to prepare for human exploration of the planet in the future. Since landing, the rover has beamed numerous photos of the surrounding landscape back to Earth, and many of those photos have been closely examined, as they seem to show mysterious and unknown objects on the planet's surface. One such unexplained image was taken in March of 2012, and it shows an object that does not seem to fit in with the rest of the surrounding landscape. As with so many photos claiming to capture extraterrestrial objects, it is out of focus, making it hard to see the finer details of the object. Nevertheless, many people have theorized that it's the remnants of an alien spacecraft that has been left behind on the planet. Others have been quick to dismiss these claims, however, stating that it is far more likely that it's the debris from the rover's landing gear, or from its sky crane landing system. It seems very plausible, as the rover has been known to take photos not only of its own landing gear, but of itself as well. But for now, the creepy photo remains a mystery, and as is noted by Nigel Watson, the author of the UFO Investigations Manual, unless we get more detailed information, it's likely another case of wishful thinking. In August of 1975, husband and wife Peter and Diane Berthelot were on holiday in Worstead, North Norfolk in the UK. They decided to visit a local church called St. Mary's to escape the stifling heat, and Diane took a pew near the front of the church. Peter, however, decided to take a few photos of the building, and it wouldn't be until they had the film developed that they realized they had taken a very creepy photo indeed. Sitting behind Diane in a pew that was empty at the time, the photo shows what appears to be a woman wearing a bonnet and old-fashioned clothing. When they realized what they had captured, they were shocked and decided to show the photo to one of the leaders of St. Mary's the following year when they returned to Worstead. When he viewed the photo, he told them that he knew about the spirit, which is called the White Lady of Worstead, and it's a tale that dates back centuries. In the 1830s, a man was staying at the King's Head Tavern when he was told about the legend of the White Lady. It's said that she appears in the church every Christmas Eve, and anyone who was unlucky enough to catch a glimpse of the spirit was doomed to succumb to an untimely demise. The man, not being a believer in such things, decided to climb the church's belfry, stating that if he saw her, he would give her a kiss. His friends waited for him to return, but when he hadn't done so for some time, they decided to check on him. They found him still in the belfry, huddled over and shaking from fright. He muttered to himself, and in obvious distress, when they asked him what had happened, he said, I've seen her, and promptly fell over deceased. In Hesdal, Norway, people have the opportunity to take photos of an unexplained phenomenon known as the Hesdal Lights. The phenomenon occurs in the 7.5-mile-long Hesdal Valley, which is occupied by only 100 residents, and has become a well-known destination for tourists who are curious about the strange orbs of light that can be seen in the many photos that have been taken at the site. No one is certain why the lights appear, but they have been described as materializing both at night and during the daytime, seemingly floating through and above the valley. They differ in color and size, with some being bright white, while others are yellow or red, and often described as being the size of a car. The duration also varies, as the lights are sometimes visible for only a few minutes, while other times they stay in the valley for well over an hour. On some occasions, they seem to hover in place or sway from side to side, while they sometimes move at great speed. The phenomenon was most active between December of 1981 and mid-1984, when the lights would appear between 15 and 20 times per week. Since then, sightings have become less common, with only 10 to 20 observations being reported each year. Since 1983, Project Hesdal has been carrying out investigations on the lights. The Triangle Project was launched by students, engineers, and journalists in 1997 and 1998, and they found that some of the lights are pyramid-shaped, often observed as bouncing up and down. In 1998, the Hesdal Automatic Measurement Station was set up in the valley to record the strange appearance of the lights. As for what caused them to appear, no one is certain, though there have been many theories put forward. Some people believe that they're the result of an incompletely understood combustion that occurs between hydrogen, oxygen, and sodium, and that they are so prevalent in Hesdal due to the valley's large deposits of scandium. Other theories suggest that they're formed by a cluster of macroscopic Coulomb crystals in a plasma which is produced by the ionization of air and dust by alpha particles during radon decay in the area's dusty atmosphere. Others have noted that the valley is rich in crystal rocks, including quartz grains, which produce a very high charge density, resulting in piezoelectricity. This theory has been heavily debated, as piezoelectricity does not account for the fact that some of the orbs have been observed to have geometric shapes in their center. But despite all the research that has been done, the origin of the Hesdal Lights is still unknown. Until further scientific research is conducted, they remain a mysterious phenomenon without explanation. The strange event of the Chenery ghost and the creepy picture that accompanies it occurred on the 2nd of March, 1959. Mabel Chenery and her husband, Jim, had driven to a cemetery in England to take photos of her mother, Ellen Hamill's grave. She had passed away the previous week, and Mabel wanted a photo as a keepsake. She went to the grave site while Jim waited in the car, and when she had finished taking photos, she decided to take a candid snapshot of her husband as he sat in the car. It was only after the film had developed that they noticed something creepy and unexplained in the photo. In the back seat of the car, behind the passenger seat, was the clear image of Mabel's mother. Mabel would later explain that the seat is the exact spot where her mother used to sit whenever she was in the car with them. An unnamed photo expert who examined the picture stated that the lady in the back seat can't be the result of double exposure. If it were, the upright section between the car's windows wouldn't obscure part of her face. And he added that it was also impossible for it to be the result of a reflection in the window. When the picture appeared in the Sunday newspaper supplement Parade, it was published alongside a photo of Mabel's mother exiting the car while she was still alive. And it's noted that she was holding the same glasses that the figure in the creepy photo appears to be wearing. When they were interviewed, Mabel and Jim explained that Ellen liked to sit in that seat so that she could talk to Jim when they were out driving. Jim also added another interesting fact, which was that just before Ellen passed away, she told him that they would never come to any harm because she would still be with them. The photo has been examined by many experts over the years, with some suggesting that the figure in the car is indeed the result of an accidental double exposure, and that there may possibly have been a picture of Ellen on the film roll, taken when she was still alive, and that this photo somehow copied a part of itself to the photo of the car. This all remains pure speculation, however, as there's no solid, undeniable proof for the theory that it is a spirit, or that it's the result of a photographic error. And so it seems the Chenery ghost will remain an unexplained mystery forever. A creepy photo taken by Reverend Kenneth F. Lord in 1963 appears to show the spirit of an unknown man, and to this day, there has been no clear explanation as to what exactly he managed to capture on film. The image has since been regarded as one of the most captivating, supposed paranormal images to come out of the 1960s. While Lord was taking pictures of the church, he aimed his camera at the altar, which he was particularly fond of. When the pictures were returned to him after being developed, he noticed that the picture of the altar showed a strange, transparent figure standing next to it. Upon closer inspection, he realized that it looked like a monk cloaked in a black robe that extended all the way to the floor. The figure also appeared to be wearing some sort of white sheet that covered its face, possibly to hide the effects of leprosy or another type of physical deformity. He also noted that it appeared to be wearing a hood with a delicate pattern on its head, and that it was facing directly towards the camera. The appearance of the figure in the photo completely baffled the Reverend, as he was certain that he was alone in the church at the time that he took the photo, and because the church had never had a history of paranormal activity. Once the image was made public, it was immediately scrutinized by skeptics, since it was deemed to be too perfect of an image of a spirit, and too convenient that it was cloaked from head to toe. They also noted that if the objects surrounding the figure were taken into account, it would need to be at least 9 feet tall, and it was written off as a hoax produced by double exposure. This annoyed the Reverend, since he considered himself to be an honest man. He decided to send the photo for further analysis, and scientists at the time stated that there was no evidence whatsoever that the image had been altered or tampered with in any way. This has also caused the image to be considered one of the best photos of a supernatural being ever captured, both because of the clarity of the photo and the fact that it has been declared as genuine. The identity of the monk, however, remains a mystery. Born in 1915, Belgian ace pilot Remy van Leer was one of the first to fly against Nazi Germany in World War II. After being shot down and taken prisoner, he went on to become one of the Allies' ace pilots. Boasting an impressive record of daring missions, Van Leer had incredible spatial awareness in the air, and a knack for identifying enemy aircraft and weapons. He was one of the first Belgian pilots to break the sound barrier. At the end of his distinguished military career, Van Leer was an Air Force Base commander in the Belgian Air Force. One of his final assignments in 1959 was the command of an Air Force base in the Belgian Congo, which would not become the Democratic Republic of Congo until 1964. While returning from a helicopter mission, Van Leer claims that he saw something unbelievable on the ground. In his account, he says that he witnessed a massive snake that was, in his estimate, close to 50 feet long. According to the Natural History Museum in London, the largest snake on record is a 10-meter, almost 33-foot reticulated python, which is native to Asia. Van Leer says the snake was dark green and brown with a white belly and was moving around on the ground. He says that he ordered the helicopter pilot to do another pass over the snake so that a member of his crew could take a photograph. In the photo, what appears to be an extremely large snake is surrounded by what may be desert shrubbery. However, nothing in the image is clear enough to be certain of its scale. Reportedly, after passing over the snake several times, Van Leer's helicopter hovered 25 or 30 feet above the snake, and the crew watched in fear as it raised itself 10 feet into the air and gave Van Lierde the distinct impression that it would strike if they came within range. Unfortunately, Van Lierde passed away in 1990 and can no longer answer questions about the encounter, having only given one interview on video. In 2003, NASA launched 2 rovers to the surface of Mars on an expedition to find evidence of ancient water there and reveal potential clues about the planet's history. One of these rovers, Opportunity, had a 90-day mission. Opportunity continued to work on the planet's surface for an entire 15 years. Opportunity's mission was a success, leading to scientific breakthroughs about the presence of water on the red planet. According to discoveries made by the rover, Mars could have been wet for long enough to have sustained microbial life. In 2018, Opportunity's long mission finally came to an end as a Martian dust storm overtook the landscape and blocked its solar panels and ability to communicate with Earth. At one point during the 15-year scientific excursion, Opportunity made a surprising discovery while backtracking to a location that it had already visited. The rover photographed a section of the planet's surface 1 Sol, which is the official name for a Martian day, and photographed the same section again 13 sols later. In the first photo, the ground is empty. In the second photo, there's suddenly a strange rock, which researchers describe as resembling a jelly donut. The lead scientist working on the rover at Cornell University said, quote, "It appeared, it just plain appeared, at that spot, and we haven't driven over that spot." Upon realizing the rock, scientists were baffled, saying that it contains high levels of sulfur and magnesium, and twice the level of manganese as anything else they've seen on the planet. Some contend that the rock fell in the rover's path because it was debris from a nearby crater, and others believe the rover's wheels may have kicked it up and flung it there. Like most other things about the strange red planet, we simply don't know. An eerie photograph that's allegedly from the mid-20th century America inspired one of the country's creepiest urban legends. The legend tells that in the 1950s, a family by the name of Cooper had just moved into a new home. To celebrate, the father took a family portrait, but when he picked it up from the lab sometime later, he was greeted with an unsettling surprise. In the developed photo, a strange, faceless person hung upside down next to 2 women and 2 children of the Cooper family. The true origin of the photo is unclear. Some mystery enthusiasts on Reddit claim that it's been scaring and confusing people since the 1950s, but the earliest known posting of it online was in 2009 on a forum dedicated to the horror fiction writer Thomas Ligotti. Ligotti's work is known for its philosophical and strange style, as well as a pessimistic worldview. The user who posted the photo appears to be involved with the publishing house for horror fiction, and the file name of the photo on the website indicates that the person who uploaded it believes that the hanging body is a man. Speculators online have pointed out that the photo may be a hoax. Some say that they find the picture's composition inherently suspicious. The 2 women and children are on the right side of the frame, leaving ample room on the left to add a hanging body with editing. However, just below the mysterious figure on the left third of the photo is a candelabra, which is in line with the women, and the window behind them is perfectly centered. The top of the window and the bottom of the table appear to dictate the frame, and it's impossible to know which of these elements influenced the photographer's decision, or whether they intentionally left room to edit in this terrifying subject. Others online have stated that they believe the dark figure to be a photo of a ballerina composited onto a family portrait, which could contradict the file name of the Thomas Ligotti fan website, which claimed the figure was a man. The photo's authenticity remains as mysterious as its origins. In 2009, the Irish filmmaker George Clarke discovered something he couldn't explain. Clarke had purchased a box set of Charlie Chaplin's greatest works, and as a filmmaker himself, he binged through the DVD special features. One of these extras featured archival footage of the 1928 premiere of Chaplin's film The Circus at the Chinese Theater in Los Angeles. This is where he caught a detail that would change his life and take the internet by storm. In a shot of moviegoers outside of the theater, a woman dressed in a large dark cloak and hat passes behind a model zebra and pauses. Just after she stops walking, the film crossfades to another shot. If the footage is paused just before it fades away, viewers can clearly see the woman hold a black device up to her ear, as if she were speaking on a cell phone. Cell phones would not be invented for another half a century. The woman seems to be speaking into the device, and her knuckles are bent around it, implying that it has the flat shape of a cell phone. The most unsettling detail for Clark is that just before the end of the clip, the woman turns and looks toward the camera. Unable to make sense of what he saw, Clark screened the footage to more than 100 other people seeking answers. None were able to offer any reasonable explanation for the woman's behavior. So his leading theory became that she was a time traveler, although Clark is somewhat skeptical of the idea. In October of 2010, Clark posted a YouTube video explaining the footage and how it left him dumbfounded and searching for an explanation, which inspired hundreds of theories online. Some have posited that the woman was holding her hand up to block the sun from her eyes, or to try to block out sound, and some claim that she was merely talking to herself. The most popular theory seems to be that the woman was using an early commercial form of a hearing aid, which was invented in the 1920s. Nicholas Jackson, a former associate editor at The Atlantic, added that premieres at the Chinese theater were luxury events, so a high-class attendee would likely have been able to afford new hearing aid devices coming out on the market. It may be too difficult to determine for sure with the available footage. Between 1968 and 1972, NASA's Apollo program put 12 astronauts on the surface of the moon. Apollo 17 was the final such mission, and humans have not returned to the lunar surface since. The expedition, crewed by astronauts Eugene Cernan, Ronald Evans, and Harrison Schmitt, collected important rock and soil samples for study of the mysterious rocky world. Before they left, the astronauts placed a plaque on the moon's surface, proclaiming "Here man completed his first exploration of the moon, December 1972 AD. May the spirit of peace in which he came be reflected in the lives of all mankind." Years later, some citizen scientists discovered that the brave astronauts may have returned with a disturbing secret. Part of the astronauts' mission was to explore the lunar landscape using a rover, and record it with cameras that were mounted to their chests. These images are now preserved in the publicly accessible online archive, which is where fans of space exploration found a seemingly unexplainable image: a pyramid on the moon. The faded photo is grainy and low contrast, making it difficult to analyze. Boosting the contrast of the image, though, makes it clear that it's a nearly perfectly shaped pyramid that seems to sit on the horizon away from the camera. In the official notes, NASA simply wrote "LRV floor?" sunstruck, meaning researchers assumed this was a photo of the rover's floor and that the negative was damaged by exposure to sunlight. Amateur analysts online became fascinated by this creepy photograph and have put forth some potential explanations. Many frames at the beginning and ending of the film rolls from the mission are blank, sun-damaged, or photos of the rover floor. The pyramid photo is the last frame in its roll. Also, by analyzing the photo in sequence with those around it, it can be assumed that the astronaut photographer was standing near the rover at the time he shot the image. In the photo, the pyramid is near the upper right corner of the frame, and a bar shape can be seen near the lower left, which some have pointed out could match parts of the rover. In this explanation, the pyramid could actually be the rover's seat. One commenter also bolstered this idea by pointing out that the background behind the pyramid in the photo is bright, but the space between the moon's horizon is black. However, there's no official word from NASA, and with no other files to analyze, these explanations are purely speculative until man makes a fateful return to the moon. Back in January of 1987, a young woman named Zona Xu was found to have passed away in her home under extremely mysterious circumstances. Even stranger is that by the time a doctor arrived at the scene, her husband had moved her body and completely redressed her. Over the next few days, his strange behavior continued, though everyone assumed he was acting strangely out of pure grief, rather than assuming he had any sort of involvement in her passing. Her cause of death was ultimately ruled as heart failure, as no other signs or symptoms could be found. Though just a few weeks after Zona was buried, her mother came into the police station, pleading to have her daughter's body exhumed. She said that her daughter's ghost came to her in a vision, stating that her husband had been abusive for many years and in a fit of rage had broken her neck by strangling her. Police thought this was a bit bizarre, though since her cause of death was still very much uncertain, they agreed to dig her up. Sure enough, upon additional investigation, her neck was found to have been broken. Her husband was then charged and taken to trial, at which time he was found guilty. He was sentenced to live in prison, though passed away just 3 years later. Emily Sagi never knew she had a doppelganger, though all of her students and coworkers certainly did. Emily worked in an exclusive girls-only school and was noted as being an extremely excellent teacher, though she had issues with moving jobs frequently. In fact, within just 16 years, she changed jobs over 19 times. It wasn't until 1845 when her most recent boss found out why. Emily was found to have been the center of extremely paranormal activity. During one of her classes, over 13 students witnessed a strange apparition behind her, mimicking her every movement. Emily had no idea that this figure existed and couldn't observe it on her own. Though whenever the figure appeared, she did begin feeling extremely groggy. Some believe that the figure had subliminal control over Emily and may have been controlling her more often than not. Eventually, the figure became extremely disrupting to her lectures and her students were unable to learn their courses effectively. Because of this, Emily had to be fired from her 19th teaching job, all because of a ghost that she wasn't even able to see. In March of 1995, a man by the name of Terry Cottle took his own life in his bathroom after he and his wife had been involved in an argument, very similar to arguments they'd had countless times before. His wife had heard the gunshot and run to help, though Terry had passed away before she could do anything. Luckily though, Terry was an organ donor. Paramedics arrived on the scene and his heart was eventually harvested to be given to a 57-year-old man named Sonny, who'd been diagnosed with an incurable heart condition just a year earlier. A short time later, Sonny wrote a letter of appreciation to Terry's wife. Though the organization who gifted him the heart advised against it, the two agreed to meet up and chat. Sonny said that he fell instantly in love with the woman and felt as though he'd known her for years. Eventually, they each left their significant others and moved in together, this being about 5 years after Terry's passing. Though their relationship was not dissimilar to the relationship involving Terry. Within just 12 years of marriage, Sonny ended up taking his own life in the exact same way as Terry, leaving Terry's wife a widow once more. In a quiet town in Georgia on September 8th, 77-year-old Minnie Winston found a small spot of blood in her bathroom floor. Alarmed and concerned, she called her husband in to check it out. They then followed a trail of blood which they found led to the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom, hallways, and even the basement. They even found a small droplet under their television. The two became so concerned that they phoned police, though police found absolutely nothing and didn't take the matter very seriously. They took a few blood samples and went on their way. After this took place, everything returned to normal once again. However, after just a short while, more blood appeared, this time in different locations. The couple soon got a call back from police asking the couple what their blood types were. They were both type A. As it would turn out, the blood type found on the floors was type O. Detectives returned to the home once more, yet again found absolutely nothing. They were able to rule out any sort of foul play, though they never did find out where the blood was coming from. To this day, it remains a mystery. Back in the 1940s in South Carolina, a group of college students were wandering around near a theater late one evening, though they were shaken to their core when they saw a gray-faced man wearing a silver suit approach them. He then fled beneath a manhole cover that was nearby. The man had escaped into the sewer system and was never seen again. He was given the nickname Sewerman until his next more terrifying encounter in April of 1950. In 1950, a policeman was responding to a call after a property owner discovered that his chickens had all been mutilated and left on his lawn. The policeman showed up to investigate and just in the distance noticed a gray-faced man wearing a silver suit. The policeman shined his light in the man's face and saw that he had a third eye, located almost exactly in the middle of his forehead. The policeman radioed in for help, though the man had disappeared before they could capture him. A very similar experience was reported once again in the 1960s by another group of college students, and the reports of the third eye man continued to pour in until the early 1990s. After this, the legend was laid to rest and no additional sightings have ever been reported. The third eye man's story remains a mystery to this day.
The Sally House, located at 508 North 2nd Street in Atchison, Kansas, is rumored to not only be the most haunted house in Kansas, but in the entire United States. It was built in the mid-19th century when Atchison was still a growing community, and since then, it has garnered a reputation from the horror stories that occur there. The house has gained its nickname thanks to a young girl named Sally, who was brought to the house while suffering from severe appendicitis. The owner of the house, Dr. Charles Finney, performed emergency surgery, but Sally passed away during the operation. She is said to still haunt the house's halls today, with many people describing seeing her in the cellar and one of the upstairs rooms, which is filled with toys. In that same room, people have described seeing some of the toys move on their own and hearing phantom footsteps. Sean Daly, an anthropology professor, has done some research on the house, and although he says that there is no proof that a girl named Sally ever lived there, he agrees that there is definitely something strange going on in the building. He states that they've had objects move on their own, window blinds open and close when no one is nearby, and some people have reported being scratched by an unseen spirit. The current owners of the house keep the radio on at night to keep Sally happy. But it's not just Sally that haunts the house. Some visitors have seen the figure of a middle-aged woman in some of the rooms, and she is rumored to be behind some of the more sinister activity that has been recorded there. One person claims that they stayed over when a friend lived there, and one night while they were asleep, the curtains in the friend's room inexplicably caught fire. It's believed that those who suffer scratches and bruises are victims of the woman's attacks. Other strange activity that has been reported includes mysterious cold spots, physical touches, malfunctioning electronic equipment, and training guide dogs that refuse to enter the house, even when prompted by their owners. West 10th Street in Greenwich Village, New York, is the location of a haunted house known as the House of Death. The house was built in 1856 and has seen its fair share of inhabitants over the years. The widow of James Bodman Johnson, the founder of the Metropolitan Underground Railroad and the Broadway Underground Railroad, moved into the house after he passed away, and it's said that the strange activity started as soon as she and her children left the property. The famous author, Mark Twain, also lived in the house for about a year while he was battling bankruptcy. Many people have reported seeing him trudging up and down the stairs, and some believe that he is also the one responsible for the disembodied sounds of marching that can sometimes be heard coming from many of the vacated sections of the house. Shortly after the house was transformed into a co-op building with 10 condo apartments, one woman and her daughter reported seeing him sitting, perched on one of the window seats. Twain, whose real name was Samuel Clemens, approached them and said, "My name is Clemens, and I has a problem here I gotta settle." In the next morning, he seemed to vanish into thin air. After actress, author, and psychic Jan Bartel moved into the house on one of the top floor apartments in 1957, she reported almost immediately that there was a monstrous moving shadow that followed her around the house. On another occasion, she wrote that she saw the ghostly figure of a man standing in the hallway. She reached out to try to touch him and described the sensation as a chilly, damp substance without substance. Her family also claimed that food which they had not purchased and that was already rotting would appear at their dinner table as if it had been sitting there for days or weeks. When they hired a paranormal expert to investigate, they were told that the house was haunted by upwards of 22 spirits. This included a woman in a white dress, a young girl, and a gray cat that still walks through the house. 9820 Easton Drive in Benedict Canyon, Los Angeles, is better known as the Jean Harlow House, since the famous actress lived there in 1932 after her husband, Paul Byrne, who was an MGM executive, bought it as a wedding gift for her. Byrne would be found deceased in the house on the 5th of September of that same year. His passing is suspicious since many people claimed that his common-law wife, Dorothy Millay, took his life and made it look as though he took his own life. Millay was known to suffer from mental health issues and had spent time in a Connecticut sanatorium. In 1963, celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring bought the house and soon after started dating actress Sharon Tate. She often stayed over at the house and stated that on one of those nights she was sleeping in Byrne's old room. She woke up to the sight of Byrne standing in the middle of the room and she fled. As she reached the stairs, she saw another ghostly figure tied to the staircase, though she couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman. When another family, who is known only as the H family, bought the house, Mrs. H went there the day before they were to move in. As she walked up the stairs, her dog started growling and barking at something in the upstairs rooms, and she approached the master bedroom and felt a strange presence before someone whispered in her ear, "Please help me." On the first night in the house, while the couple was getting ready to sleep, a heavy object struck the side of their bed 3 times, but there was nothing to be seen. They also reported that the ceiling lights would flicker on and off, and that a strange, formless light would appear near the ceiling in the living room. In that same room, Mrs. H and her aunt heard the painful sobs of a woman, and on many occasions there would be knocks on the front door, but when it was opened, no one was there. In the kitchen and the upstairs bedrooms, people have reported feeling cold spots, and in the children's bedroom, there have been reports of a smell of a woman's perfume. On one occasion, Mr. and Mrs. H had the same foreboding dream in which they saw the bathtub full of water and bubbles. They both saw a hand reaching out from under the water, switching on the light, and receiving a shock before withering back under the water. They phoned an electrician to investigate the switch in the bathroom, and he found that the wiring was dangerously outdated and immediately replaced it. The S.K. Pierce House is a haunted house that was built by a wealthy furniture company owner, Sylvester Pierce. The S.K. Pierce & Sons Furniture Company was so successful that it led to Gardner, Massachusetts being known as the Chair City. The house took over 18 months to build, and many of the features, such as the moldings, were all hand-carved. But the mansion soon saw some hard times as the family's fortune started to dwindle. Pierce decided to turn it into a boarding house, and soon it was the site of unsavory activity, such as gambling and excessive drinking. A Finnish immigrant named Eino Saari is said to have succumbed to a fire in the master bedroom in 1963, and many people believe that the fire was caused by spontaneous human combustion. Since then, people have experienced an array of paranormal activity in the house. The spirits of S.K. Pierce and his wife, Susan, as well as their son Edward, have been seen here, often joined by their nanny, Maddie Cornwell. Others have claimed that the figure of a man named David, who is said to have ended the life of a street worker in the house, is also seen here, along with his victim. Others have reported seeing Pierce's granddaughter, Eino Saari's spirit, and others have seen the figure of a young boy, as well as dark entities that reside in the house's basement. Other experiences include the sounds of disembodied chanting, full-body apparitions, furniture moving on its own, window screens flying off without cause, doors slamming, footsteps on the stairs, sudden temperature changes, foul odors, and the sight of shadow people. There have also been reports of an ominous lion's roar that seems to shake the entire house. One woman described a presence that tried to push her down the stairs, and another told of an entity that nearly forced her out of a third-story window. Many paranormal investigators have described the spirits in the house as the most advanced they have ever seen, and they have the skill to harness electrical energy that is converted into the ability to move objects around at will. A true story recounted by a woman only known as Jane concerns a haunted house located at 455A Sackett Street in Brooklyn, New York. Her family moved into the house in 1998, and she felt right from the start that something was out of place in the building. She describes it as an incredibly dark space, though they should have been excited to move in as they had never lived in a multi-story apartment before, this one having 3 floors, including the basement. But about 2 weeks after moving in, strange events started to occur. A neighbor told the family that no one had lived in the property for more than a year at the time, as they were forced to move due to tragedies that would befall them, and the strange atmosphere in the building. Jane recalls that there was indeed a strange ambience in the apartment, and that it was cold, damp, and uninviting. They decorated the place to make it feel more homely, but try as they might, nothing seemed to help. Shortly after, the ceiling in her brother's bedroom collapsed right after he left the room to use the bathroom. On another occasion, a neighbor ran over to the house, screaming that one of the bedrooms was on fire. While Jane ran upstairs, she saw that her bedroom was engulfed in flames, and she attempted to put it out with a blanket, but the door slammed shut behind her and she had to be rescued by a friend after nearly passing out from smoke inhalation. Another friend left the house screaming after seeing the spirit of a boy dressed in rags staring directly at her from the bathroom mirror. Another friend, who had not been told of these experiences, reported seeing a woman walk into Jane's room through a closed door. One day, Jane and her brother heard the sound of children crying and laughing, and when they tried to leave their mother's room, they found themselves locked in, even though there was no lock on the door. It took nearly an hour before the door inexplicably opened again. Jane further explains that to the day that they moved out, they always felt as though someone or something wanted them to leave and never come back. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.